Have you ever noticed something strange about people? When you're kind, patient, and understanding, they take you for granted. But the moment you become distant, quiet, a little colder, suddenly they respect you. They listen more carefully, they respond faster, they start treating you like you matter again. It's confusing because you were trying to be a good person. You were trying to be fair, supportive, and emotionally available. Yet somehow, the moment you stop giving warmth so easily, their behavior changes. They become more careful around you, more attentive, more respectful. So why does this happen? Why do some people only respect you when you're cold? Tonight, we're diving into the dark psychology behind this strange shift in human behavior, a pattern that quietly appears in friendships, relationships, workplaces, and even family dynamics. Because once you understand the psychology behind it, you'll realize something powerful. It's not really about being cold. It's about how people interpret power, access, and emotional availability. And the moment you see it clearly, you start moving differently. The first thing to understand is that respect and warmth are processed differently by the human mind. Warmth creates comfort. Respect creates caution. When someone is consistently warm, always forgiving, always available, always understanding, the emotional environment becomes predictable. Predictability feels safe. But safety without limits can sometimes reduce perceived value. If someone believes your kindness will always remain regardless of their behavior, they stop monitoring themselves carefully. Your presence becomes assumed, and when something becomes assumed, appreciation slowly fades. This isn't because kindness is weak, it's because unchecked comfort removes tension. And tension is often what maintains awareness. Another reason people respond to coldness with respect is because emotional distance introduces uncertainty. Uncertainty triggers attention. When someone suddenly becomes quieter, less available, or less reactive, the brain tries to understand what changed. Questions begin forming. Did something happen? Are they upset? Are they pulling away? This uncertainty increases psychological focus. The person who once felt guaranteed now feels unpredictable. And unpredictability forces people to reassess their behavior. They begin watching their words more carefully. They start considering your reactions again. What changed was not your value. What changed was their awareness of losing access to it. There's also a deeper social dynamic involved, perceived power. In many interactions, power is subconsciously associated with emotional control. The person who appears less emotionally reactive often appears more stable, more confident, and harder to influence. When someone becomes overly expressive, overly accommodating, or overly reactive, they unintentionally signal emotional investment. High emotional investment can sometimes be interpreted as dependency, and dependency shifts power balance. But emotional restraint communicates something different. It suggests independence, and independence commands caution. People are naturally more careful with individuals who appear capable of walking away. Another factor is behavioral conditioning. If someone behaves poorly and you respond with patience every time, they learn something. They learn that their behavior doesn't threaten the connection. But if the response suddenly changes, if warmth disappears and distance appears, the brain recognizes a shift in consequences, and consequences shape behavior. This is why a calm withdrawal can sometimes have more impact than confrontation. Confrontation still signals emotional engagement. Distance signals the possibility of loss. Loss triggers correction. There's also the psychology of scarcity. Scarcity increases value. When attention, validation, and emotional support are constantly available, they lose their perceived rarity. But when those things become limited, their value increases. If someone becomes less accessible, less eager to give time, energy, or emotional reassurance, people suddenly notice the difference. What was once background noise becomes something they want to recover. This doesn't mean you should manipulate people by withholding affection, but it does reveal an uncomfortable truth about human psychology. Abundance is often overlooked. Scarcity is often pursued. Another reason coldness creates respect is because it forces people to confront boundaries. Warm personalities often prioritize harmony. They smooth over tension, avoid conflict, and forgive quickly. But when someone becomes colder, they often also become firmer. Shorter responses, clearer limits, less tolerance for disrespect. These signals create structure, and structure forces people to adjust their behavior. Without structure, people operate based on convenience. With structure, people operate based on consequences. Respect grows where consequences exist. But here's the critical distinction. Coldness alone does not create respect. Indifference does not automatically equal strength. What people are actually responding to is not emotional coldness itself. They are responding to emotional control. Someone who can remain calm, measured, and unaffected by pressure communicates internal stability. Stability suggests confidence. Confidence suggests independence. And independence triggers respect. When people say they respect someone who is cold, what they often mean is they respect someone who is not easily influenced. Someone who cannot be emotionally manipulated. Someone whose boundaries remain intact regardless of external pressure. That's the real source of the respect. But there's another side to this. If someone only respects you when you become distant, it also reveals something about them. Healthy relationships do not require emotional withdrawal to maintain respect. Mutual care and boundaries can coexist. When someone only adjusts their behavior after warmth disappears, it means they were responding more to access than to appreciation. They valued the benefits of your kindness, but they only respected your limits once those benefits became uncertain. This is not a reflection of your weakness. It's a reflection of their psychological priorities. So why do some people only respect you when you're cold? Because warmth creates comfort, and comfort can reduce awareness. Because distance introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty demands attention. Because emotional restraint signals independence. Because behavioral consequences reshape habits. Because scarcity increases perceived value. And because clear boundaries force people to adjust. But the real lesson here is not to become emotionally cold. The real lesson is to balance warmth with strength. Kindness without limits becomes invisible. Kindness with boundaries becomes respected. You don't need to withdraw your humanity. You simply need to protect your standards. Be warm, but not endlessly available. Be understanding, but not endlessly tolerant. Be kind, but never at the expense of self-respect. Because when people realize your kindness is a choice rather than a guarantee, they begin treating it very differently. And that's when real respect appears.